Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video, and in today's video I'm going to be predicting the Valle versus Estrada fight. If you're new around here though and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So going into this fight, Estrada is 25-0 with 9 KOs and Valle is 30-2 with 9 KOs. This fight is for the IBF, WBA, WBC and WBO World minimum weight titles. Valle's last fight was a win via unanimous decision versus Ortiz, and Estrada's last fight was a win via unanimous decision versus Udica. This is in Estrada's home country of America, and in my opinion, this is the fight which I've been wanting to be made for such a long time, and it's so good to see it finally happening. And in general, I'm sure it's going to be a very entertaining fight. It's got all the kind of makings to be a very entertaining fight, and it's great to see Top Rank and Golden Boy working together and putting their, I suppose, differences to an extent aside because of this great fight. And I'm surprised in general that this isn't main event. Like, the main event of this card, which I'm going to speak about in a moment, is a good main event and it's a creditable main event, but in general, I think this fight is an amazing fight, like I mentioned, and that's why I'm doing my prediction for this one more than the other one, because it is, like I mentioned, the fight which I've been wanting to happen for such a long time. And it's good to see that Golden Boy has settled their differences to an extent with Top Rank and is seemingly willing to work with them. But with somebody like Valle, they built her up nicely, but there has been a couple fights where it's like that she's taken, which it's like you respect her for being active and wanting to be active and taking the fight, but it is slowing progression down a little bit and isn't really necessarily necessary, if that makes sense. But I mean, you could argue that with Valle's last fight versus Ortiz, it was against an Ortiz who hadn't. I mean, she was on the older side, and it wasn't really a necessary fight to make, and it wasn't Valle's best performance. I think possibly to an extent. I mean, often you see fighters not fight their best when they can't necessarily get themselves up for a fight. Credit to Ortiz, she did what she had to do, but on paper, I probably would have liked to see Valle put a bit of a better performance out. But to be fair, when you look at Estrada's last fight as well, it was a tough fight versus Udica. I'd probably say that Udica is a better opponent than that of Ortiz, but Udica landed quite often quite clean shots, and especially early on was having a bit more of the success. And Estrada had to face a little bit of adversity, where she has had to do in certain points in her career, and she's always been able to manage and to get through it and to come back from it, and she managed to do that again. But in general, I mean, if you look at ages, they're both the same age, and it is arguably probably the best time in their career to make this fight, and so that's why I'm so excited for it to be happening. And like I mentioned, also on this card, Valdez Wilson, main event for this card. It is a good fight. Valdez is coming off the fight. I believe his last fight was against Navarrete. I might be wrong, but it was a great fight. But you have to look possibly and think that Navarrete is maybe on the side a little bit. No, I mean that Valdez is on the side a little bit, and I don't know necessarily if that's the case or not. Wilson is coming off performances where he's gone back to Australia and he's rebuilt himself a bit as well, and has been looking very good, and he's deserving of this chance again. And saying what he did versus Navarrete and how close he came to winning in that fight, it's good to see him deservedly getting this opportunity again, this top level, top fight opportunity again. And in my opinion, I'm going to say that Wilson will win via unanimous decision. I think it's going to be a close fight. I think it's going to be an always all-action, entertaining fight. I think Valdez is always an entertaining fight to watch, and will always show that guts, that will, and probably will end up getting a bit bloodied. And Wilson, he's going to want to prove himself, but he's also going to want to make an entertaining fight. And if it's anything like that fight versus Navarrete for Wilson, then it will be that of an entertaining fight. And like I mentioned though, I think Wilson, as the younger fighter, I think he might want it a little bit more, and possibly Valdez could be overlooking somebody like a Wilson. And yeah, I think Wilson might be able to get a unanimous decision or even a split decision win, in my opinion. Going back to this Valle Estrada fight though, Valle as a fighter, she moves well. She's got fast hands. She can fight on the front foot and the back foot. She fights well at a mid range. She's got a good jab. It's a jab which she throws out quite consistently, quite often. She doesn't always necessarily find the range overly well with it, but when you're throwing it out often, then you are keeping a distance, and even if you aren't necessarily landing with it, you are maintaining a distance and you are keeping an opponent away, and she does that relatively well a lot of the time. She's got good combinations when she throws them. She's got very good timing. That's probably, in my opinion, one of the better things and best things of her is her timing. She was probably landing the cleanest shots on Ortiz in general just because of the timing that she had. And when you're against me like an Ortiz who isn't really going to commit too much to shots, but when she does, she will throw her whole self into it, and she is quite slow and is there to be timed. It was nice to see Valle consistently timing her, and yeah, no, that was good to see. She definitely improves throughout fights and does gain in confidence, and that output that she throws improves throughout fights as well. She's confident. She's of course got momentum with her. She's got that backing of Golden Boy with her, and there's no reason as to why she shouldn't be confident. She can be quite physical as well. She's not overly the biggest to fight. I mean, none of these two are in general, but she was being quite physical in that last fight versus Ortiz especially, and she does show that she can be physical and she isn't willing to just, sit back and be bullied or be pushed back. She has quite a high guard at times, which is nice. I mean, Estrada has a relatively high guard at times as well, and so, that's nice to see. She's got them solid fundamentals via the good straight shots, the good jab, like I mentioned, and the solid waiting for you to come onto a shot timing type shots. She resets well when she does go into a close range, like I'm going to mention in a moment. Sometimes it can be a bit sloppy and it can be a bit messy, but she gets back to her boxing nice and she goes back to what's working nice and she finds her range relatively nice again. And she can dig deep as well. She has a relatively good gas tank and she is willing to dig deep when necessary. And so, yeah, quality fighter. Negatives, I suppose, to an extent. Finding range at sometimes, like I mentioned, pretty much with a jab, can sometimes be a little bit of a problem to actually find the range with that. But she is a bit of a slower starter in my opinion than that of Estrada, and so I suppose maybe the early rounds where she is trying to find her range via, it'd be interesting to see how Estrada deals with that. She doesn't always, in my opinion, commit to shots as much as what she can do. Sometimes she will, get drawn into a fight and then overcommit sometimes on their shots. But I think with her timing being as good as it can be, she should probably, in my opinion, commit a little bit more to shots and be willing to, roll the dice a bit in that aspect. And it's just a little thing that I thought I'd mention. She can be a bit messier in close and isn't got anywhere near as good as in close work as Estrada. She's not always got the best of shot variations. She does go to the body a bit. I'd like to see her probably a little bit more. She's got that good overhand left, but that's pretty much, she doesn't always throw any other kind of shots. Like she hasn't really got too much of an uppercut, or the right hook isn't always there as well. And sometimes she won't throw the cross as well, and the straight shots in general. She doesn't always let them go as well. So shot variation at points. She doesn't always have the best accuracy either at times. She can stand quite straight on at points, but so can Estrada. So I feel like if this does end up getting dragged into a bit of a war, standing and trading type fight, it's going to be very entertaining. But it wouldn't surprise me if that does happen. And yeah, like I mentioned, sometimes going to the body isn't always the best attribute from Valle. But Estrada as a fighter, close range fighter, like I mentioned, seems to be able to get into range quite nicely. And she is, small, quite compact in her work. And yeah, close range will let her hands go nicely. Fast hands, changes levels, is very entertaining, very nice to watch. High output, front foot, does also counter well on the front foot. She has good timing as well and will try and catch an opponent. If an opponent will commit to a shot when they're on the back foot, then she seems to always be able to counter them quite well. She's a combination puncher, always seems to throw in combinations, and that's nice to see with the fast hands. She outworks, she's hard to get off you and hard to maneuver around. She's got good balance, and Valle can sometimes seem like like I said, a little bit messy on the inside with the fact that she will stand straight on. But Estrada, who does also stand straight on as well, seems to have a very solid base and seems to maneuver around that base and pivot around that base quite well. And it means that she does have that of a good balance and, like I mentioned, good base, which is always good to see. She finds what works and can kind of stick to it a bit. And against Udica, there was a few things which were going wrong early on, like I mentioned, but she made some adjustments. She found what was working. She was landing shots consistently, even if they were repetitive shots at points, but they were landing shots. They were doing what they had to do, and so why not? And like I mentioned, it was good to see. Negatives about her: head on line. Her head can be on the line for quite a bit of time, and she was definitely getting caught with quite a few shots just by keeping her head on the line and possibly chin in the air a little bit at times against Udica. She sometimes needs to plant her feet at the right times. She is always willing and wanting to plant her feet, but sometimes it isn't always the best of time to do so, and that's when she can get caught with shots just by doing it and kind of setting herself onto a shot from doing that. She's going to be there to be hit in close, in range, always going to be there to be hit, and sometimes she's going to be willing to stand and trade, and she can leave her punches out a bit too long and just sit them there waiting to get countered a bit. And like I mentioned, crossing the feet isn't always the best of attributes either. And Estrada is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Estrada is going to win via unanimous decision. I think it's going to be a good fight, this one, but I think Estrada, who also has a great work rate as to that of Valle, is going to wear Valle down and outwill her in close, and Valle might make it a little bit messy in close and might start clenching a little bit when she realises that she can't really seem to hold Estrada off of her. And yeah, I think Estrada's going to be able to outwork her in close and outpoint her and outscore her in close, and that's how she's going to win. Then realistically, this is a huge fight in the division, but where she goes from here, I'm not really overly too sure. Normally I like to list opponents who they could go on to fight next, but I genuinely aren't too sure as where she can go as to next. But if this is such a great fight, then why not do a rematch again? They've both been quite dominant champions, so why not do it again? Or moving up and down in weights for Estrada, I feel like is probably the best option, because at this point then she will have kind of completed everything in the minimum weight division, so I don't feel like that would be too much left for her to achieve. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next for both fighters after this fight. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did indeed like the video, subscribe if you are new, and thanks for watching.